Welcome back to Comic Krackle. I'm your host, Kirby, and today we're going to be talking about comic apps. I've seen a lot of discussion online regarding which apps to get, so I figured since I've been utilizing these apps for a long amount of time, I could at least extend my knowledge to better inform you. So today we're going to be going over all of the different comic apps that I personally use and telling you the pros and the cons. All of these comic apps provide the reader with the opportunity to download these books so you can read them offline. And it's been very helpful to be able to download those comics and read them when I don't have Wi-Fi. For example, I've taken a few flights over the past couple of years, and sometimes I don't want to pay for the Wi-Fi. Sue me. So I boot up one of my apps and start reading one of the comics that I downloaded previously. Also, if I'm going on a road trip, obviously I'm not driving, but I'm going to be reading those comics to help pass the time. A common complaint of buying so many physical comics is it's pretty hard to store them. In the studio, and what I mean is our spare bedroom, I have an entire closet that's filled with long boxes and short boxes of all of the physical comics that I've bought. And then also, obviously, behind me, I have all of my physical trades and omnibus. So it gets to be a lot. And when I'm reading so much, sometimes I just want to opt in for the iPad or whatever tablet devices that you use. I'm not sponsored by Apple. A really big problem with digital comics is twofold. The first is that Comixology is owned by Amazon, and Comixology is not as good as it used to be and doesn't allow for the maneuverability to buy all of these titles, as well as selling digital comics at the same price of physical. The price being the same just doesn't make sense to me, and really I just see it as the comics industry kowtowing to the direct market because local comic shops would believe that the digital market would kill all of their business. But I don't think that lowering the price of digital individual comics would actually kill the comic shops, but I know why they're hesitant. So up first, we're going to be talking about DC Infinite. You might be familiar with this app because previously it was DC Universe. This was like the Netflix that DC came out with that hosted TV shows and movies and then comics as well. Once Warner Brothers formed HBO Max and then later retitled to Max, they folded in DC Universe but let them keep all of those silly little funny books. I've actually had a subscription to DC Universe since the first day that it was announced, just because I was so excited to have an individual app to read as well as watch all of my favorite DC characters. So suffice to say, I know a lot about this app. So for the membership for DC Infinite, there's 3 layers of subscription. There's the first, which is a monthly model, and the price point is $7.99 per month. There's also the annual subscription, which is priced at $74.99 annually. And then there's the last subscription, and it's the one that I personally subscribe to, which is the DC Infinite Ultra, which equals out to $119.99 per year. If I'm going to be honest, the Ultra subscription is really the selling point of the app. With the other 2 subscriptions, you have to wait 6 months after publication to get new books. But with Ultra, it's just 30 days after it releases. So now we're going to do a side-by-side with the app and just showing you some of the pros and the cons. Okay, so this is the main page whenever you pull up DC Infinite. And as you go along, the front page is pretty well done. They have all of the comics that you already had available or that you are already reading. And then they give you the ultra latest releases. So this week, at time of recording, the Justice League Unlimited #1 just came out on DC Infinite. So I can actually hit this, read it, and now I can read the entirety of the first book, which is pretty nice. And then as you go on, they do different showcases and trending titles so you can know what's popular with the majority of the users on the app. Now, if we go over to the Comix section, this breaks down every single one of their DC series that they have on the app, but it's not very user friendly. So what we can do is use the filters or the sorts. So for filter, we can do the eras, the top characters, the artists, writers, imprints, data range, trending, and art style, but it's not as helpful as it seems. If you go into the artists, it doesn't have every artist to search for, but just their specific list that they're giving you so you can specify. And if you cut over to the writers, again, it's just the list of creators that they specified that you can individually search for. So with the filter function, it seems like it's a lot better than it is. So now we're going to go to the sort function, and the only thing that the sort does is A to Z, Z to A, newest and oldest. And then you have to scroll through an endless supply of comic series, hoping that you find the one that you want. At least on the Comics tab, they do have multiple sections within, specifying if it's all comic series, DC Go comic series, storylines, get to know, and showcase, which now we'll go through just some of these. DC Go is for a younger demographic and then also optimized to be for mobile. And then storylines allow for you to go through the individual stories that are popular or the ones that you want to find, but it doesn't have every single character story listed here. And then get to know, I think that this is very good if you want to be introduced to new characters and want to read some of their seminal runs. For the first one up, Power Girl, for example, you can read some of her most recent appearances and select issues to know what's going on with the character generally. So it doesn't provide for an all-encompassing reading list for individual characters, but it's the one to get to know them. And then lastly, you can go to Showcase, which is going over the individual kind of playlist that the DC Infinite app provides for all of the readers. It's pretty neat. I don't really use it that often. So next we're going to go over into the search tab. This is good, but not great. If we're going into search, let's say Jack Kirby, for example, it doesn't just specify for Jack Kirby. Sometimes if a character's name is Jack, then he'll get pulled up as well. Like you can see right here with Starman, Night and Day. There are some of the Jack Kirby collections and ones that are published by Jack Kirby, but as you scroll along, the less like Jack Kirby it will be. See, like this is Jackson Hyde. That's not Jack Kirby. So the search functionality is kind of good, but you have to specifically search for individual things and make sure that the keywords are correct. Also, if you're searching for individual creators in the search tab, it's not very user-oriented. So I have problems all the time with trying to find work from individual creators and trying to see if the DC app has this. Now, one thing I do want to highlight is the fact that their catalog is massive. So, you know, just for example, if we're pulling up the Kamandi saga, this has the volume 1 of Kamandi, and it breaks it down by individual issues, and then also you can read this volume. There's also opportunities to read stories through Omnibus, so all of the supplemental material is available to you. It's just a matter of if you can find it. Another thing that I want to highlight is the vast array of DC comics that are on this app. Not only do we have the main line of comics and the ones that are coming out currently, but also looking at the imprints, you can see DC Go, DC Black Label, which is the adult-oriented stories, the DC Comics, which is the main line, Vertigo Comics, and Young Animal. So searching for these, it doesn't really specify on if they have specific user-oriented based on the range that they are in age. It just provides everything on one app, which is a lot different than the next app that we're going to be talking about today, the Marvel Unlimited app. So the Marvel Unlimited app is not as detailed as DC Infinite. The price point is $9.99 per month or $69.99 per year. There's not a lot of fluctuation between when you get those comics. It's just a standardized time of 3 months after publication they'll be put on the app. On top of this, they only have individual issues, so there's no volumes or omnibuy that are available through this app. But the cool thing is that they do include all of the back matter that would usually be put on an individual issue. Like last year, I was reading through a lot of the early issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and all of those issues on the app had the letters column by Stan Lee and the creative team that was answering questions to the readers. It's a pretty neat inclusion, but I would still prefer if they had volumes and omnibuy available on this app. There is something that's additional that I need to note before we actually get into the app. It's definitely not everything, and they're continuously uploading new comics every week, adding to their back issues catalog, with seemingly no drive to actually add all of the Marvel Max titles to this. There's not a functionality like there is on the DC Infinite app that provides you access to all of the titles, or even specifying on the audience that has access. Basically, like parental controls, they don't have that. So they just cater to the widest demographic, but not allowing you to actually read everything in their catalog. Okay, so now let's jump into the app. As you can see, the main page is a lot like DC Infinite's. You can go down to the books that you've already opened previously and continue your reading from there. Also, the new issues that are published, the trending titles, recommended series, and a lot of specifics on a lot of synergy that's coming out with the MCU or movies that are releasing at the time. Those comics that are recommended reading will usually be put on the main page. Marvel also offers the Marvel Infinity comics, which is just like DC Infinite's comics, that are specifically for mobile reading and is typically catered to a younger demographic. So these are books that are exclusive to the app that you won't find anywhere else, unless they change their mind and then publish them in physical. They also provide the opportunity for event reading guides. So for example, the Venom War that was recently published, you can read in order the majority of these books with this subscription. And the next part is actually where I think the Marvel Unlimited app beats out DC Infinite, and that's the search functionality. If we go onto it, we actually can specify on what we're looking for. It doesn't matter if you're looking up a specific creator, they have everyone listed here. And you can search no matter if they're a writer or an artist, and specifying on the books that they've written or drawn for. And to demonstrate this, why don't I live up to my title of the leader of the Bendis Brigade by clicking on Brian Michael Bendis and looking at the works that are listed under his name. So a lot of these give the opportunity to either sort them by oldest or newest, or the title of the series, as well as putting a specific date range on the books that are published. So with the filter, we can do the issue read status if you've already read it and you want to omit that, the characters that are in it, the creators, the series, and the specific publication dates. So for Brian Michael Bendis, the first issue was released no earlier than September 6th, 2000. So that would be the parameters for this specific creator. But if we moved on to Stan Lee, they might be different. One of the notes that I do want to put on here is whenever you look up an individual character, sometimes the app doesn't register that the character is in a story, so they don't include it. This was specifically frustrating whenever I was doing my Spider-Man Miles Morales read through, reading up from Inception all the way up to the modern day, and some of the issues that are listed on League of Comic Geeks that they either make a full appearance or a cameo appearance is not available through the search functionality on the Marvel app. So if you run into a problem where you're looking up an individual character and you can't find the specific issue that you're looking for, really I just suggest that you go over to the search functionality, and let's say that we're looking up a random issue of Spider-Man Miles Morales. We'll look up Miles Morales 23. Just a random issue. And now we can search by the individual issues, and this will show us every 23rd issue that Miles has, which obviously hasn't been a lot. There's only been 2 series that make it up to that point, and specifically titles with his name in it. Other than the late times getting the actual publication of the books to the app, being 3 months. Another one of the problems for this app is discovering new books that don't have a high profile. So specifically for books that aren't usually in a character's top 10 list, it becomes more difficult for discoverability. This was a major problem in the Marvel app that I ran into when I was trying to look for books for characters that aren't already talked about ad nauseum. The one good thing is though, if you don't mind scrolling until your thumbs bleed, is that once you find those series, you can save them to your library, which you can have for later reading and also adding to lists and books that you're following and even your downloads. So it doesn't make up for it indefinitely. And the major problem with this app is not holding all of the books in their catalog, the 3-month wait to get new books onto the app, and then discoverability problems. But if you can get past those, this app might be good for a Marvel Comics reader. Okay, if you've been watching the channel for any amount of time, you might be familiar with this next app that we're talking about, and I promise this is not a sponsored video. I've actually been a fan of GlobalComix for a long time since I found them advertising on Strange Brain Parts' videos. The pitch of this app is to be a one-stop shop for every comic that you're looking for from independent publishers. For the pricing, it ranges for monthly at $7.99 or yearly for the first year at $79.99 and then going forward at $89.99. Or if you use my code Krackle, it's $59.99 for your first year. And now that's what I call a shameless plug. Before I was familiar with GlobalComix, I was always questioning why they didn't have an independent app that rivaled a Marvel Universe or a DC Infinite. And thankfully, GlobalComix is filling that void for me. The interesting part is the amount that you pay in your subscription goes back to the creators of the books that you read. That amount of royalties goes all the way up to 70% of your membership goes back to those creators. It also must be noted that this app is creator opt-in. So while the majority of creators are beginning to get hip and actually hosting their comics on GlobalComix, it's not absolutely everybody that's ever done an independent series. Another thing about the app that I think is very fascinating is that it allows for self-published works to be hosted on the app. So it doesn't matter if you're Brian K. Vaughan or somebody with a random YouTube channel, I don't know, Comic Krackle, that wants to make a comic, we can all have our books put onto this app. And you get to decide what level of membership that the person needs to be able to read your book. On top of that, you can sign up for GlobalComix and have a free account, and there's a lot of books that at least let you read the first issue for free. And this is not like Comixology or the Omnibus app, if you were familiar with that, where you had to pay these exorbitant prices for individual comics. This is a subscription app just like Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite. Now that we're in the app, this is the main page whenever you pull it up. So as you can see, there's a top listed channels, which has DC, Image Comics, Boom Studios, Verticals, which are the mobile comics that are set for phone reading, and then Dark Horse as well. As you scroll on, they also provide you with the books that you've read or you've started, and then they have a myriad of suggestions for comics that you can start reading, ranging from DC books that are already on there to self-published works that are starting to get more eyes on them. So as you scroll through, you can see updates by publishers, a leaving soon tab. So this is pretty close to Comixology, where they only have the rights for specific books from publishers for a specific amount of time. As you can see, the vast majority of the books that are leaving are from DC Comics. So most likely what's going to happen is that DC has a contract with GlobalComix, hosting specific books for X amount of time, and then coming back with a new catalog to be hosted on the site. As you go on, you start seeing books that are popular on GlobalComix, the DC Essentials, Dark Horse, specific creators, new releases, and then you can go down to the creator calendar where you can basically find which books are going to be uploaded on specific days. As you scroll on, you you also see the latest GlobalComix news where they have all of their lists for top 10 books or news for the app that are listed here, which I think is very good for reader involvement in what's going on. They also give the opportunity to source an audience for crowdfunding books, basically being able to host them and then being able to support them through links from the creators. Now, this is something that you might have seen if you've watched any of my coverage on the GlobalComix through sponsored segments, but this provides for you to go through all of the publishers that they have on the app, specifically Image Comics, Dark Horse Comics, Bandai Card Games, Boom Studio, DC Comics, Bad Egg Publishing, AWA, Top Cow, Oni Press, Vault, Magma Comics, Dynamite Entertainment, and then the list just keeps on going on and on. Specifically, a good resource I would use is going to Humanoids. Those are all of the underground quote-unquote books that are going to be indie darlings. But what's even cooler is as you go on, you can even see Tokyo Pop, which has a lot of manga titles. So it's not just comics that are Western or superheroes, it's independent comics and mangas. Once you're at the top of the main page, you can also specify for the different categories that you want to click on. So specifically, you have the For You, the Following, the Comics, Manga, webcomics, and free. So depending on your membership, if you only have free books that are available, you can click on free and it'll give you a list of all of the books that you can at least try out. On top of this, you can move over to the GlobalComix Originals tab that gives you the opportunity to read through all of the books that are listed and available through the site independently. One thing that I do love about GlobalComix is their search function. So it shows that you can search for a series or creators, and then being able to specify for those filters with type, genre, theme, paywall, creator type, audience, format, art style, crowdfunding, country, language, and time/era. So if you don't know what you want to read or it's very specific, the parameters that are on GlobalComix allow for you to get directly to those books. An additional note is that GlobalComix allows for you to read comics in the same way that DC Infinite does, where you can read in volumes or omnibus, and even on GlobalComix they include a compendium. So it's really adjusting to the specific reading guidelines that you want to follow. On top of this, they have a highly customizable reading experience. So let's say, for example, I want to read Invincible. So we go into the continue reading and we pull up from the page that we last left off. This individual page, let's say it's 14. So it'll tell you that you can go back and forth and read through all of the individual issues, but then customizing your experience based on the way that you feel like reading. You can do the automatic one-page layout or specify for individual pages, and then they also give you the opportunity to do double page, which is basically reading horizontally like you would read a normal comic book, and then also stacked, which is one page on top of the other and you flick it up. With this, they also give you the option for the image sizing, so specifying for auto, fit to height, or fit to width whenever you're reading in the guided view option. The reading settings allow for any reader to adjust their settings to how they best consume those comics. One additional thing that I think is very interesting is that there's also an inclusion of a community tab, being able to leave comments on specific comics or issues and being able to start a individual conversation. Yes, this top comment is referring to Fortnite and Invincible, whatever. Maybe it's not the highest of brow, but I do think it's very interesting to be able to communicate with other readers while you're reading. It allows for this expansive sense of community where reading comics is really just an individual experience. So yeah, I do like GlobalComix a lot, and I'm a fan of them before I got a specific code. And again, if you're still interested in using my code, allowing for your first year to be $59.99, go to the app, sign up for a yearly membership, and use my code Krackle for your first year at $59.99, compared to not using my code and the first year is $79.99. Not only do you save $20, but then you also help the channel. So Win-win. Okay, so last on the chopping block, we have the Kindle app or Comixology Unlimited. This is owned by Amazon, so I'm not really sold on this entire model, but it is pretty cheap. And if you want some discounts on buying books, along with finding new books that you might like, this might be a good use of $5.99 per month. So Comixology is through Amazon, and it's really like a Netflix model. They host books through Comixology and you can read them off of the Kindle app, but it's never a guarantee which books are going to be on there and for how long. With a membership, it might be worth it to at least start reading some of those books, but you might also find if you're reading like an independent series, you get a couple of volumes in and then Comixology doesn't have the rest. So that's why I don't typically use Comixology that much and just completely moved over to GlobalComix for anything that's independent. It also needs to be noted that Comixology has been severely downscaled in the past few years, specifically having a better user interface. And then since 2020, they've been downscaling it over and over and cutting the amount of workers and the teams on Comixology, so it's not as good of a reading experience as it once was. A note that I will say in their favor is that if you have the Comixology Unlimited membership, then if you're buying comics through Amazon, you might get discounts on them. I don't think that the discounts are that much. Maybe on an individual issue, you might get about 50 cents off, or for an omnibus all digital, you might get a few dollars, but it's really comparable to the holiday sales that they do. And sometimes you can either buy them digitally or also get them discounted if you buy the physical version through Amazon. It's a relatively low barrier to entry to be able to find these books and read them, but as I displayed earlier, the Marvel app, the DC app, and GlobalComix all basically serve the function of Comixology. And now momentarily, we're going to take a look at Comixology and see what the user interface looks like. Okay, so whenever you bring up the app, this is the main page. This goes over your library, the books that are recommended to you, and a lot of other suggestions that are books on the app, which is great, but if these books aren't a Comixology Unlimited book, then you can't buy them through this app. And you need to go over to your Safari or Internet Explorer or whatever else there might be and buy the books off of Amazon's website, and then they automatically get uploaded to here. Now on the app, you have the homepage, the library, which you can go over all of the books that you own and specify based on the series, which is pretty nice, especially for downloading and reading offline. And then lastly, you have the more suggestion, which isn't a whole lot, and it really just ties into Amazon. So now if you're going and you're trying to find new books that aren't automatically recommended to you on the home tab, you can also go over to the Kindle Unlimited, the Prime Reading, the Kindle Vella, and then specifying on the genre. And then if you go to the very last one, it has the comics and manga. They're really trying to hide that in the back. So for the comics and manga, you have the featured new releases, the unlimited books that you automatically get with the membership. If you scroll through this, as you can see on the homepage, at least the majority are going to show Comixology at the top, and being able to specify as you scroll for the books that you're wanting to read or that you're trying to find. Now, once you find a book that you like and you want to read it, you can just click on it and it'll pull it up and it says read for free, Comixology Unlimited included in your membership, and you can add it to your list or you can just hit read free, which now it's automatically uploaded to your library. So now we have the book open. So you can scroll by the individual pages or you can go to the bottom left. You can also provide this functionality if you're wanting to get to a specific book. The reading optimization is not as customizable as it is over on GlobalComix, and it's really just in line with the reading experiences provided through Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite. So at the end of the day, it's really based on your preference and your reading habits on what's going to be the best option subscription for you. Personally, I get the most enjoyment out of using the DC Infinite Ultra subscription, as well as reading through GlobalComix, and I don't really utilize Marvel Unlimited or Comixology Unlimited unless I have a specific thing that I'm going to read that is neither a DC book nor an indie book. What I would recommend before getting any of the subscriptions is looking up the books that are hosted on the individual apps and the ones that you want to read. So that's going to be enough out of me. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, go down to the comments and tell me what you want to see in the future. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. What are you waiting for? And last but not least, go read some comics, or else.